Hello, everybody. Looks like the meeting is live. It's Parker Dunbar, not your normal host. I know everybody's used to seeing Josh Blaylock here. Has anybody seen Josh? Rob, any ideas?
We've seen
Josh?
He's everywhere.
Well, that's true. He's all over social media. Beachgate's blowing up right now. But Rob and I are here. We're taking over, technically speaking, this month, Jabra's Unwebinar series, where we get together, chat on a topic that's relevant to folks in the industry. This is definitely not your average webinar. We're a little bit more informal. We want to kind of dive into the meat of some of the content here. So we are excited for everybody to join. Some of you might be here with us in Florida, sunny Florida, warm Florida, beachless Orlando at Enterprise Connect.
Slightly cloudy.
Slightly cloudy. Yeah, actually, it was foggy today. I don't know if you looked out from your room.
I did.
It was foggy for me. So we've got a little bit of an even different format than usual. You got Rob and I together in one room at one time. If you're here in Orlando, feel free to stop by booth 600 and say hi. There's a couple hours left in the show. Pass things over to Rob. Anything you want to say? Lead us in?
I think I'm supposed to say AI at this point.
Oh, that's right.
And maybe AI again.
Okay.
So
all right.
Just for a good measure, and AI.
Okay.
That's been the theme of the show so far, is AI being used everywhere to help, improve efficiency in all kind of walks of life here. So been fun, been interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly been a good show. So today we're talking about something that might be at the forefront of people's minds. It's Microsoft's new BYOD device capabilities. So this is something that is still actively rolling out. We're not talking to you about something that's done. We're talking to you about something that's out there in the market for you to start looking at right now, and is going to continue to get better and better. So as we go through this session, we're going to tell you sort of what's the current state of things and what's that generally available experience look like. And we'll take your feedback, take your questions, take those pain points or the areas that matter most to you, because we want to be able to feed back all of that so that the right people get that input. So this is your opportunity to be really, direct with your questions, direct with your thoughts. And Rob and I, we're here to listen, and we're here to tell you about what's out there right now. So you know me, I've done this before. Rob, have you done it technically?
Of course I have. Just because I haven't been lately doesn't mean I've never been on it technically. Okay. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
All right. So that's me. That's my LinkedIn code. That is me at a beach. True to form. Know what a beach looks like. California or Florida, I can spot one from miles away. My dogs don't care for the beach because they don't like water. So fun fact of the day. Pass it over to you, Rob. Any fun facts?
I am a avid but not professional golfer. But I'm Rob Houston, Senior Solutions Consultant at Jabra. I have a lovely wife and two lovely daughters who didn't make the slide. So it tells you something about my priorities. So,
wow.
So with that, what are we talking about? So back in January, in one of Microsoft's blog posts, they announced that they were working on management of bring your own device meeting spaces in the Teams Rooms Pro Management Portal. And they were also talked about something they call the new shared display mode for BYOD meeting rooms. So, this is, as a sales engineer, I speak with IT managers, IT decision makers, and partners who help those personas with companies large and small be successful. This is what I do in my job. And when we think about what it means to video enable spaces, there are still many reasons why a full room system is something that people are keen to deploy in rooms that can vary in size. Sometimes it's a very large room where a room system, there's more flexibility that might be needed to operate, to meet the needs of the users in those larger rooms, or even, and what I think we typically see is that in small rooms, there might be a need for just kind of almost like a hot desk scenario where an end user, unplugs their laptop from their hot desk, goes to a small room or a huddle room and docks into the meeting room and uses the room's audiovisual peripherals for, a small meeting, much like what we're doing here today. So when Microsoft announced that they were kind of thinking about the BYOD use case, my mind went to, okay, great. So there's something for the admins and something for the end users, right? So we're seeing some of this online now, and some of it is still that work in progress. But again, this slide just kind of indicates, this gives kind of within kind of the Teams tools, now 2 different room experiences, a full Teams room. And again, we have these, on that side, there's still Teams rooms on Windows, Teams rooms on Android, many different solutions for rooms of many different sizes. And now with this new kind of Teams shared display mode in the Teams client, we have a room, called a room optimized way of using the Teams desktop client. And I think that's a thing in talking with customers and in previous roles when we think about, the BYOD use case of an end user bringing their laptop to the room and using a desktop client, which is otherwise optimized for a person at their desk or a person on their mobile device. But most often it is you're at your desk using a webcam and a headset. But when a normal non-technologist end user, I always have to remember them because we're technologists and we use this stuff and figure out ways to make it maybe do things it wasn't supposed to. But for those half, 2/3 of an organization's citizens, right? The employees of large organizations, there might be some intimidation or some simple tricks that they don't know how to do when it comes to taking their laptop into a shared space and using a client that was optimized for personal use in that shared space. So we eschewed the live demo today because you know how show floors and Wi-Fi and all that good stuff can be. But I've taken some screen caps in my home office back home that will help. I can actually drive this a little bit here. I think so.
I see. No, you're syncing to percent.
Right,
so
cool.
For those of you, PowerPoint Live, what we're doing right, sorry, not to segue
Go for it.
off it, but we're using PowerPoint Live in this presentation. It's super fun for us on this side because we get to see ourselves real big up on that secondary screen. But Rob's over here, he's trying to control the PowerPoint from his laptop, which again, this is actually, I think, case in point for why it's so important to care about the end user experience. Because as you're rolling these features out, it's not necessarily your 100% focus in the meeting room to be driving that technology. So the more it can do something natural, supportive, cohesive, the better. So you tell me, I'll click next whenever you like.
So again, when we think about what was life like, or what's the end user actually do when they're BYOD? So this is my home office. That's my laptop. And I've walked into a meeting room and I've connected, you can see the 2 cables. I connected via HDMI to the display on the wall. And I connected via USB to one of the many video bars back there in the corner. And my laptop, and this is what always happens. My laptop is mirroring its laptop screen to that front of room screen. Okay. And again, as an end user who might not be thinking ahead, what am I going to do? Right. So I've connected, I've docked my laptop into the meeting room and I go find my meeting that I'm going to join from that meeting room. And up comes the familiar Teams pre-meeting join experience. And, and in this case, I've done the thing. I've made sure that room speaker bar is set as the microphone and the speaker, and that the room bar is set as my camera, so I don't join the meeting but get the webcam, the laptop camera shot. I've set the AV. I've done that, and then next I join the meeting, and my laptop display is still being mirrored to that front of room screen. And so if I don't know any better, my laptop has now become the video codec for that meeting, and it's going to be pretty hard for me to have OneNote up to be taking meetings because I'm going to be fighting with what everybody needs to be seeing on that front room screen to actually still have a personal workspace on the device I brought to the meeting. And or worse, I'm going to be getting notifications of emails that come in or notifications of Teams chat. And my laptop has now become dedicated to being the Teams endpoint in that meeting. And unless I know to do some things, I've kind of lost that. Maybe I bring my notepad and I take notes in the meeting. But so that for a lot of end users is the reality of BYOD is there is a loss of the power of their personal productivity device that they bring to the room when that device has become the video endpoint. So go to the next one. I think you can just skate through this. So what this new Teams shared display mode looks like is here in the same case without really thinking, I've docked my laptop into the meeting room. I'm connected to the display and the video bar. I've clicked the meeting I want to join. And, there's always one little trick you've got to know, but similar to the proximity join user workflow that Microsoft has had in the Teams desktop client for a while, where if you're in a Teams room and you're joining a meeting on your personal desktop or mobile client, you can see a prompt that says, hey, you should use room audio. And that room audio will actually allow your laptop to go into the meeting, but will also call the MTR into the room, right? So you kind of get the room to join automatically on behalf of your desktop client going to that meeting. If you expand that room audio, we'll look at these screen caps in a little more detail, but actually, why don't you do that, Parker? So when I see this pre-join, I'm getting a suggested thing there because yes, as a sales engineer in my office, I have like 8 MTRs in there and they're all saying, use me, use me. But if I expand that, there's now in that room audio area in the pre-join, there's actually a new offering that says connected room devices. And I took this a little while ago, and actually now there's even kind of a USB icon that would appear next to that Jabra PanaCast 50 that's in this screenshot, kind of calling someone's attention to the idea of I've just connected to something in the room. I see a connector that looks like the thing I used. I should select that. And so when I do, if you go to the next, now it is saying that, we're going to use room audio. We're going to use the Jabra PanaCast 50. And yes, I had my video off. But again, when I join the meeting, there's a couple things that happen. My favorite thing is that the Teams desktop client has told Windows to extend its monitor to the front of room screen. So we're not stuck now with this mirrored, 2 of the same display where the end user is looking at their laptop, seeing it up on the front of room screen and trying to figure out how do I manage and curate the far end video feeds coming to the room, content that might be shared from remote participants, but also trying to take notes, or God forbid we stay up to speed on email and chat while we're sitting in a meeting room. So it's expanded, and the Teams meeting window has actually been separated into 2 windows. And so on that front of room screen, there is a Teams meeting window that is devoted to the video coming from the far end. So in this case, I didn't have friends joining me in this scenario. I was just looking at myself. But
did you ask?
I have friends.
Are you sure?
And I've tested this thoroughly, but again, I did the screen caps once and we rolled with it. So again, far end video appears on the extended screen. Content coming from the far end appears on that front of room screen. So if we think about it, the stuff that all of us in the room together need to be able to see is sort of being by Microsoft, by virtue of them moving that Teams desktop client meeting window into 2, they have put 1 for shared content and video up on the front of room screen. And then I still have a Teams control window on my laptop, and that's where I can see things like the meeting chat. And I have my meeting control, so I can still mute and unmute and turn my camera on and off and do all the things that you're otherwise used to being able to do in the Teams desktop client when you're at your desk. But they've kind of separated those 2 things, which for me, I think, again, this solves a really common problem for non-technologist end users is how do I still do the things on my laptop in a meeting when I'm the meeting in a meeting room. So really like that experience. The other thing is by virtue of kind of selecting the connected room device, we've gotten past this thing of, where sometimes your laptop mic and speaker are still set. And, so the end user is in the meeting, but the voices are coming out of their laptop. How do I make the voices come out from the front of the room? So it kind of with one selection that is, I think, fairly trainable and communicatable, that is something that end users can kind of do. And that will greatly simplify and I think help them adopt and embrace this type of room design, which that's what it always comes back to is there are many reasons why BYOD becomes the right answer, whether it is rooms that have very little budget. So they're trying to do a kind of a minimal technology investment to check the box on video enablement. Maybe it's an environment where there is every long tail of interoperability requirements might be required. So it's really best to just any meeting an end user can join to their desk, they can join in the meeting room. And therefore that's very simple. But this resolves some of those things that I think become little hiccups. And again, for a lot of, the non-technologist half of an end user's organization.
Now, let me ask you, Rob. So you go in, you choose room audio as your join option in your meeting, and then just this auto-magically happens that we're in this shared layout. How do you get out of that?
Yeah.
How do you go back to, the next task?
Sure. So again, you end the meeting. Upon ending the meeting, Teams will kind of put itself back into its one form, and it actually unextends the desktop. So it really gets your laptop kind of back to the state it was when you're about to leave. You unplug, you go back to your desk, you go to the next meeting room, you move on with your day. So really about kind of getting into the room, getting connected, getting the meeting going in the right way, and then being able to just peace out.
I mean, the way I look at this, at the end of the day, if your end users are familiar with the experience for PowerPoint, they're going to have a really easy touchstone user experience where they've already seen this, they're a little familiar with it. It saves them a step of extending and duplicating. I know in a previous life, I spent a lot of time in more detail in extend and duplicate and all of that, and the ways that Windows handles that, remembers that the next time you come into the room, if it remembers that display, it's going to do the thing you pick. That can be really confusing for IT. That can open a lot of tickets from end users that are really just like basic user experience tickets, but they still need to have attention, get replied to, and they're always time sensitive. You know, if you're in a meeting, that's a really time critical that, that hopefully you're starting a meeting in under 5 minutes. Sure. And I'm going to, give us that optimism there. Yeah. But I think this really improves on that experience. Yeah. Pretty drastically.
And again, as a solutions consultant / sales engineer who talks with IT decision makers, daily about the types of technology that are right to deploy in their rooms, I always like to work back from the IT decision makers customers. The IT decision maker is in a lot of ways you look at it, they are a product manager. Their product is meeting rooms that are optimized and able to be used by their customers who are the end users. So work back from their end users' requirements and make sure that the rooms are going to work great. And I just think that this solves for, again, in that real stock BYOD scenario, this is a nice thing where IT decision makers have a better shot of training people and getting people comfortable in joining in the rooms and joining this way.
Now, Rob, I've got to ask, who drew Mario on your board over there? Because that's a pretty impressive,
pretty good Mario. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Nintendo's going to be coming after us.
Yeah, pretty good Mario. Didn't erase the Mario. No, that was my daughter Jill drew the Mario. So yeah, so that one stayed on the whiteboard. No.
Yeah. You can't erase that. That's gotta stick around. All right. So as Rob kind of alluded, this experience isn't just an end user experience. There's also some value here for IT admins as well as decision makers. And Microsoft has really, in their blog post, in their follow-up Enterprise Connect blog post, they kind of made it clear that there's a bit of a separation here between what's that shared display end user in the room experience that's already there in public. You don't have to have a special, insider ring of the Teams client to see that. And this IT pro management portal side of things, which is there. It's kind of phased rolling in right now. So there are some features and capability that are there. There's going to be more features and capability that are going to be added over time. And you get the little disclaimer. You can see it here in my screenshot. When you go into Pro Management Portal and you're looking at the inventory, they're even calling out, hey, this is kind of in preview mode. There's some changes that are coming. There's licensing requirement changes that are coming. So in the spirit of getting technical on our Technically Speaking webinar, I want to dive in a little bit on what's the Pro Portal management experience look like right now? What can you do there, having done a lot there? And then we definitely want to hear your feedback, have your engagement in the chat, or we'll have some Q&A time at the end. So jumping into things, what's in this? What's in this for IT administrators and decision makers? Because if you're going to invest your time in setting all of this up, in creating these linked devices, what's the benefit? What's the return on that? So I kind of grouped these. I think there's 3 things. You get an overview of your deployed hardware. So these are the shared peripherals that are in those BYOD meeting spaces. So your PanaCast 50s, your displays that you have in the room, that's now going to be something that you can see in that Pro Management Portal. You get device association with those meeting rooms. So not only can you see what hardware is in a room, but you can go in and you can say, this room has this particular PanaCast 50, it has this particular display. And now with that resource account that's tied to that room that you created, you can kind of get that quick overview of what those hardware components are. Right now, that is a manual process, but in the future, Microsoft is looking for ways to try to automate and simplify that process of device to room association. So that's something that's definitely going to save administrators time in the future, being able to have that happen automatically. But if you were to go in right now and start testing this feature out, plugging different devices in, what you're going to see is that you're going to have to make that association yourself. And I'll show you where that's going to happen. And then finally, usage reporting data data is going to start to become available. And I wanted to make sure to do a call out here. So this overview of deployed devices and device association with meeting rooms, there's no license required to do that piece. You're just creating a resource account. Of course, got to give a little asterisk here. This is subject to change at Microsoft's discretion. This isn't our feature, so we can't tell you how it's going to work forever. And you definitely can't take this webinar recording to Microsoft and demand that they give you a perpetual license. But you heard it here first. I don't have that kind of authority. This usage reporting, this is where that Teams shared device add-on license does come into play. So you might be able to get a little bit of usage reporting right now. They're still in kind of a preview period here, but we know that there's going to be a changeover to requiring that. So that license is getting assigned to the resource account that represents that particular meeting room. So you don't have to have one license for the TV and one license for your PanaCast 50. That's not the sort of model here. The license is for the room that you're in, and you're associating those hardware devices to that room on the Pro Management Portal side. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of just an idea, sort of what's in it for you, what's licensed, what's unlicensed from a feature perspective. So as far as what do you need to have if you want to start testing this right now, because in fact, you all can, if you've got the right resources in an Office 365 account, you're going to need a display. We're testing with HDMI displays, but if you were to take your display and connect it to a docking station that then gave you a USB-C cable that consolidated your display and your USB peripherals, that's all right. You got to make sure that docking station isn't stripping all of the information away about those connected peripherals, because that does get delivered to the computer, does get used by Microsoft. So you don't want a totally anonymizing docking station in there. Otherwise, all you're going to see is whatever that spits out. You can have that USB camera, microphone, speakerphone. So you might have something like a PanaCast 50 where everything is just integrated into one piece of hardware, or you might have some separate hardware in that meeting space. And you're going to need a laptop with the new asterisk Teams client. So if you are joining the meeting right now and you look in the upper left corner, if your Teams icon has the little tiny new text in the name, or you can see it in your taskbar as well, you just need to make sure you're not on Teams Classic. So these features are only available in new Teams, which isn't all that new, Rob. It's been around forever, right? I mean,
if I'm using it, then it can't be cutting edge.
That's
a Luddite.
You're always staying a couple generations behind, just from a stability perspective.
I like to wait till the cake is baked, except for here where it was, it was worth get our head wrapped around it. Yeah.
So those are all things that, anybody can just go out, buy, grab a few things, plug in together and test. You do need some Office 365 access. So you're not going to be able to do this for let's say you're a reseller or you're an integrator and you want to show your customer how this works, you're going to need to work with their IT or have some privileged access levels yourself, because you've got to create a resource account for that meeting room. You need to have access to the Teams Rooms Pro Management Portal. So if you can't get in there, you can't see or do any of this device association. And then optionally here, because this is all on the reporting side, you would need that shared device license or Teams shared device add-on license to attach to the room to be able to see that BYOD reporting information. So, if you're writing your checklist of what do you need to get started testing this, that's the bare bonesest list. I think you'll be able to see some of these capabilities in action. So you want to test your first device now, and you want to experience this in a meeting room. Shared display, the experience that Rob was talking about, that's very, very straightforward and easy to test, because all you need is a display and some USB connected peripherals, and you join the Teams meeting using that room audio option. And by picking room audio, that's that trigger that says you need to have a room experience, not just an end user individual experience. And I think the key here too is that with this new model, you have this shared experience in meeting rooms being driven by the Teams client, but when someone is connecting from their desk, if they don't have this shared device experience at their desk. So this isn't going to disrupt their workflow of working from home, working hybrid, working coffee shop, whatever that looks like for your end users. So same Teams client is giving you different experiences based on your users' behavior, based on natural choices that they would make in a meeting room or when they're working from home. And maybe natural is a strong word, maybe trainable choices that you could give to your end users that track and feel, pretty on brand. If you want to test automatic discovery, the population of equipment, and when I say equipment, I mean those HDMI displays, those USB connected peripherals, that's going to be a little bit more involved. You're going to need that Pro Portal access. And the way that this works right now is that you connect those devices to your laptop via USB, HDMI, maybe you have a docking station that's delivering everything over one USB-C connection, that's okay too. And then you need to go and join a Teams meeting. And it's that pre-join screen that's, you're making sure you go through that process. And then you are going to end the meeting and you're going to join that's with that same set of connected equipment from 4 other unique end users in the same tenant. So a total of 5 unique end users in a given tenant need to connect to the same piece of hardware in order for it to populate as a shared device on the Teams Pro Portal side. Why would there be this requirement? Why would not everything just show up when you connect and join one time?
I'm just answering the question in the chat. Same thing, Debbie. Great question. So, yeah.
Debbie, great question.
Yeah, so that all of our desktop devices don't suddenly like a like a black hole of like crashing together. That it is the logic being 5 or more users having connected to devices that are, the TVs and the AV bars and the like is kind of when that gets flagged to be able to be prompted into the inventory and PMP and therefore be recognized and either ignored or looked at as a tell on again, I think to hear Microsoft talk about this in a lot of ways, there's BYOD rooms and some organizations are kind of the Wild West. As IT managers, we may have no idea how many devices are out there being used this way. And so a way of understanding what devices are actually being used. And then, if you want to go down the route of, yes, we're actually going to define these spaces and want to be able to see and monitor usage and the like, that is where that will come. And yes, the hot desking sounds like, again, I think there's
Debbie,
some gray area here.
This is such a great question. And this is really, I think, why it was so valuable for us to have this webinar now and to not wait, because that's a piece of feedback that we've brought to Microsoft about this in our working with them ahead of sort of full GA of all of the feature sets. So they are actively looking at that and working on that, but I can't wait to go in and tell them that the question came up in our webinar: how does this experience impact hot desking? Because it's important to make sure that you don't just suddenly have this
either in scope and they will plan for that, or it's or it will be out of scope. So great question. But what we're certainly with our focus on the video side, we're thinking about rooms. So this is kind of the scope of what we've been testing and really trying to get to understand. But yes, hot desks are going to appear similarly, and that's kind of kind of in the next batch of questions that we're going to posing to Microsoft, and I think everybody is. So good question.
And I was going to say, so here's the thing: at the end of the day, even if all of those hot desk peripherals do end up in your Pro Management Portal for a period of time, maybe where we're in some intermediate state, when you're doing device association, that is a searchable, filterable option. So if you were a very large organization, you had a lot of rooms deployed, you might already be tracking things like the serial number of the devices in your room. You would be able to search, filter, find a particular device so that you don't have to scroll through that long list of other devices that are there. So it's a great question. It's definitely a question we're asking. We just want to also caveat that there is that filtering tool that's built in already. I saw a question came in about device association, so we're right on track, I think, and your head's right where our heads are at. So for those of you, in case you haven't used Teams Pro Management Portal, or you haven't looked at this, I just wanted to give you a little overview of where you want to go, what you want to look at. So once you have logged in, you're going to go to the planning section and you're going to open the inventory tab. And the first thing you're going to see in inventory are rooms. That's the default tab within the inventory. So when you see rooms and you just heard about this new BYOD feature, you might be thinking, are all of my devices going to pop up here in this tab? And the answer is no. So this rooms tab is kind of the, I'll call it the filtered, manicured view for your organization. This is going to be populated by your resource accounts. So as you create resource accounts for your different rooms, that's what's going to appear here in the Rooms tab, so that then when you go and add devices to a particular resource account, to a particular room, those devices will then be discoverable here under that room. So as a property of the room, you can go in, you can click, you can see the devices that are in that room. So it gives you this reporting page that's really more reflective of your organization, because the room is the thing that's kind of the most important to be tracking. And then if we hop forward, we go over to the devices tab. So this is within that planning, inventory. Now you got a little devices tab. This is where all of those automatically discovered devices are going to appear. So over time, as your users are connecting, you'll see numbers going up. There's still lots of discussion about, what does the final form of this UI look like? I took this slide from Microsoft, so it's safe to say that this is something that they're all right with us sharing. So right now you see device name, you see serial number, you see device manufacturer, those kinds of properties there. Actually, let me pull back just a moment. I can't remember if device manufacturer shows right now, but you see a device name which typically contains the manufacturer name. Everybody wants to make sure you see, you can identify. So when you're looking at one of those devices, you can click onto any device and you can associate that device with a resource account. So click on a device, that pops up the little window that you see on the right side here. And then you would click on the add to a room button, go through a little wizard of adding the resource account to that device. Let me give you a little pro tip here in case you want to test this yourself. Right now, my experience has been that the discovery of devices once 5 users have connected is quite quick. You should refresh the page to get new devices to pop up. The addition of rooms and resource accounts is a little bit of a slower process. And this is one of those things, big federated infrastructure. So typically it's taken more like 24 hours for a new room resource account that I've created to show up. So if you're going to test this and you see that the resource account doesn't show up right away, but the device shows up quite quickly, that's, let me primer you for that experience. It might not show up right away. It's not that you did anything wrong. It just may take some time to propagate through. I know this is a meaty topic, so I'm going to pause and look at Rob and see if there have been any questions in the chat that kind of haven't been covered.
Yeah, no, just to reiterate. So Ken asked, how do we get the peripherals, associated with the room? Is that manual after you join the meeting with the connected, and then do it in the Teams Pro portal? So again, once 5 users have used this shared display mode, that will get the peripherals shown up in the room. In my little test tenant, right, I had the resource accounts, the room resource accounts, which essentially had, they were no peripherals put into, Rob's BYOD room 3 or whatever. Once those peripherals were recognized and had been automatically added to the PMP device inventory list, which is kind of where these BYOD devices show, I manually assigned, okay, that P50 and that display are in room 2. So I kind of did that automatically. There is, and I think we're going to get to this, but we can kind of just get ahead, there is a workflow that's described in some of Microsoft's documentation about basically importing. So if you had a list of your known video bars and displays and, serial numbers and vids and PIDs of the USB devices that were in the rooms, you could essentially, in the PMP, you can export a room list that gives you all your rooms. And then I think there's a tab in that is now there where you could say, these are the room, so these are the 10 or the 50 rooms, and then the devices that are in those rooms, you can kind of associate them in that CSV and then import it back up into the PMP. So that's a little bit of a work in progress, and I haven't gotten that working yet. But again, there is an idea of, if you know all those devices, then you can actually get ahead of it. And even I think if they've been discovered, I think an import would sort of clean up like the devices that have been seen and get them into their room. So just wanted to say that today, like basically my experience with it, and I'm not working with Microsoft. I'm just testing this as someone who is, an evaluator or needs to know more about it. But there's kind of the let it propagate and then organize, or there is meant to be a kind of a more proactive approach to that. There's a question from Sriram around, will the behavior of room audio and shared display mode work when the video bar gets connected through something like a Barco CX or immersive? My understanding on shared display mode, again, I don't have the deep technical details, but it wants Windows to have a second display to be able to extend to. So that's the only thing I think I have in the back of my mind is if that wireless, if that wireless display is seen by Windows as a second company, right, or a second display, then I think it can be extended. But that's where,
I was going to say that's something that's definitely on the radar. But when we're looking at sort of what's the first use case, it's kind of focused on those wired rooms at the moment from a device discovery and availability perspective. But as Rob pointed out, I think this is, again, the key thing to keep in the back of your mind, and honestly didn't click for me until really recently, is that shared display experience in the Teams client is a little bit of a separate thing from this PMP reporting and manageability side of the house. So you may be able to have features in one place, but not the other. And it's ultimately going to come down to the industry, the feedback to Microsoft, the areas that you're deploying and the use cases that you see that want that kind of experience or manageability through that wireless BYOM side as well. Any other good questions? I see you're typing like furiously. I don't know if anybody can hear. We have noise suppression turned on during this call. So if you have not heard Rob typing furiously, then hopefully we also just did a great demo of noise suppression in the Teams client.
Through this. So we'll just go down the list. So Brian, would you say the advantage of the feature is geared towards users who are joining in a room with external display and would like to share content, or are there advantages for users who are simply joining the call in a meeting room? I think this is what we're talking about here with this feature in the Teams desktop client is specifically around, BYOD where I'm joining a meeting. Again, I think because this automatic extension of the desktop occurs as part of the Teams join experience to a meeting for the desktop client versus, simple in-room presentation where, I think a lot of times, like when, if a normal end user is just sharing content, any connection to the display, even if it's mirrored, we're looking at an Excel spreadsheet together that we're reviewing. So I'm probably still looking at my laptop, but Parker can see it up on the front of room screen, or, a PowerPoint presentation where if it's just my screen, I'm just talking to it. And so again, this is about joining a meeting and having an experience. And to Debbie's point, if you're in the meeting and sharing, then yes, you do something like PowerPoint Live and that shares into the meeting. You see it up on that front of room screen. You're still controlling it on your laptop. I'm sure we've all had those meetings with people where they're presenting, but they're blind to they're not seeing the Teams desktop client because they've presented and they're sharing. So again, I think this is optimized around meeting join versus simple local sharing. That's my opinion. It's not. I'm not the product manager.
You are the prior of fact for Microsoft BYOD.
Yeah. So, and then Debbie asked if there's a certification on what devices will be discoverable. Again, I think with Microsoft,
a certification around that. So that's something that as Microsoft continues to develop the mechanisms by which devices report in to PMP, they may provide some more guidance or clarity on what types of devices are going to work. But this isn't something that's searching and only, allowing a particular device. So it's not like you have to buy one thing that's on an allow list to get connected. And
that's sort of in line. I mean, again, because Microsoft Teams will let you use any speakerphone, for instance, whether it's certified or not. The recommendation obviously is to use certified Teams peripherals, but it's not a closed list where, the Teams desktop client, for instance, does not recognize something that's not certified. So again, I think in keeping with that spirit, it's sort of, giving IT managers the visibility to what's being used, right, wrong, or indifferent. And then Ken, yeah, large company, yes, after the fifth person, those devices will show up. And again, you kind of need to know where to navigate to see that kind of raw list of discovered devices. If you're in the pro management portal, you'd go under planning to inventory, and then to a sub tab that is called devices, where you would see devices that have been discovered. And so again, yes, today those would all just propagate there after the fifth unique user has been in that same meeting room. And so those devices have been discovered more than once. The Teams desktop client has reported to your tenant through 5 different users that these devices are being used. So that's kind of how that's the back-end logic for how those peripherals get kind of parked in that devices category within inventory.
Excellent. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can keep going.
I think I think we're caught up.
All right. Awesome. Well, keep those questions coming in. We are so excited to have them.
And I just want to say these are great questions. And again, I think we've seen there was a couple recent community calls where these were the exact spirit of the questions, right? Like particularly around larger organizations needing a simple way to be able to resolve these things. And I think I'm probably stealing your thunder. I think Microsoft's looking at how this might be automated. There is other logic afoot, but this is we're just kind of sharing today what we've been seeing as Jabra have a lot of customers that think about these types of room designs. So it's pertinent for us in our discussion. So we just thought to share what we kind of knew today. Yeah.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to come back to that PMP experience. I just want to show you one other thing, which is this reporting functionality. So this is something where with that Teams Room shared device license attached to the resource account, over time, the admin is going to be able to see usage data around that room. And Microsoft, in their tech article that describes this whole process, gives you a detailed breakdown of what do all of these different statistics mean. How does this? How should an admin look at this or review this? So this is what's coming that helps a decision maker look at, especially when you can know what hardware is in what rooms, what's popular, or which rooms are not being used. So it's a way within that Microsoft ecosystem to get those critical insights. Where are things going right? Where do things maybe need attention? Because you've got 5 rooms in a building, and maybe 3 of those rooms have super high utilization and 2 rooms have very low utilization. And so you can look and say, why are these spaces not getting used, or what was successful about the spaces that are getting used? So that's kind of the value there, is to be able to get that ground truth data so that you can have that data-driven decision-making process. And I thought I would just share this nice GIF. I hope it plays pretty smoothly through our presentation here. Just gives you the polished idea of what that shared display experience looks like in a meeting room. You can see they're connecting the laptop. They're using a docking station. They've got a PanaCast 50 there. They've got that shared display. They're able to have the PowerPoint live view on the laptop that they're driving, and then the shared content shows up on the display. The remote attendees show up on the display. I think the other key for me here is that the UI of Teams on the display during this shared display experience looks just like the Teams UI did before. So again, it's about some consistency there in the meeting experience so that there's not necessarily a ton of new user training required. If you like this GIF, you can go check out Microsoft's Enterprise Connect blog post where they mentioned this. That's where I borrowed it from, because it's just such a great kind of concise resource. Unfortunately, no Mario whiteboard.
We can't all have the Mario on the whiteboard.
We can't. Let me switch over here. I'm gonna share live in real time, give you a little bit of insight into what that experience looks like. Switch over. I'm gonna share a desktop. This is really raw because I'm sharing desktop and we're looking right into the Pro Management Portal side of things. So I talked to you about how you come in, you go to planning, you go to inventory. First, you see rooms. So all of these rooms that you're seeing are in fact live rooms in Jabra. I made sure to look through this ahead of time before sharing with you so that I wasn't showing anything anything proprietary. So if the InfoSec team comes after me, I actually did spend a considerable amount of time making sure that this was all sanitized, publicly accessible data. So when I look here in my devices tab, I see a lot of screens because right now that's kind of one of the main device types that is discoverable by the join process. Microsoft's kind of building out the different categories of devices that are going through discovery. You can see all my screens, they've got the needs action because I haven't gone through the room association process. When I pop that out, you see I've got the model of my screen, some serial number information for the screen. I also have product ID and vendor ID. I would love to sort of poll you informally in the chat to ask if you saw product ID and vendor ID in a form on a field, would you know where to find that information, and would you expect it to be presented as decimal or hexadecimal? This is just me going way technical in the technically speaking slide. I don't expect you to answer in the chat where you have to find it. You certainly can, but I just want to make sure whether this is something that I have a strong gut feeling about what I would expect to see here. So I would really appreciate a little bit of ground truth data here from our audience. Do you know where you might find this data about a USB device? And if you did, would you expect it to potentially be a 5-digit number, or might you think it would be in a different format that potentially contains some letters? And that's just the electrical engineering major math minor in me. Yeah, no. All right. That's fine. Yeah. So let's talk about what that import-export process looks like. So if I go over here and I click export, I promise I just made an export a minute ago, and I'm going to bring that up here. So this export is an Excel file. We're not looking at a CSV file. So this Excel file does have multiple tabs, and I'm only showing you the peripherals tab because some of those other tabs do have some information that the InfoSec team would be very unhappy if I showed on a recorded webinar. But this tab, I think, is sanitary enough. So what you see here, you have that account, that resource account, which is empty because I haven't gone through and done any associations. You have product ID, vendor ID, serial number information. You can see there's still some refinement happening on how one discovers different device serial numbers. We've got that peripheral name that gives you a lot of information about the actual hardware, and then that peripheral type field. If you wanted to add another piece of hardware, you could take this export, you could go down to the bottom, you could new line, and you could put in, as far as my testing has shown, just the product ID, vendor ID, and serial number. You can have a new device added. However, that device still needs to be discovered by 5 unique users. So this isn't something where if you already had a spreadsheet of all of this information, you could just immediately import and have that association all happen. You still need that unique user piece right now. This is something, and again, going technical, you don't have to export this list to exactly import the same list plus your 3 new items. You can have a blank list. This function, this import, is just additive. So it's going to make a new line in your Pro Management Portal with that new piece of hardware that you added during the import cycle. So I think this is, the densest spreadsheet that's been shown on Technically Speaking. This might have been the most technical part.
You win.
Is there an award? If that Josh doesn't ask me to host again because it's too technical.
only jokes from here on out from me. Yeah.
So we've got a couple minutes left. Questions have been great in the chat. We're happy to answer any more questions, take any more feedback. Rob can do a song and a dance.
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Oh, come on. It would be fun.
For nobody. No, yeah, again, there's a lot happening here. So I think the IT admin side is interesting. I'm glad Microsoft is thinking about both sides, the end user experience, and then what this can mean for people who are managing all of these, these large organizations. And again, to hear them kind of talk about it too, this is this data, often, I think their idea is that this data about the number of BYOD rooms that are being heavily used for video, allowing you to identify where, are there places that have not been previously invested in that might be worth looking at and targeting for the next wave of, for instance, Teams rooms, deployments where rooms that, so it might become a way of helping to prioritize future investments by kind of understanding utilization. Ken, you've got a question. You want to come off chat and ask? And let's see here. So the question was around difference between hardware and devices. Oh, do I need to let him off? I need to let him off. Allow mic. There we go. Ken, you can come off mute now.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Sure.
Really good. Yeah, I appreciate you guys showing a lot of this, which is on the Microsoft side.
Yeah.
A big piece for us as I'm looking at it is the firmware. That seems to be for us, global company, we've got thousands of a lot of these items globally, and so we have to take stock for different reasons when we would want to be able to search based on firmware. Do you see that coming? I know that's on the Microsoft side. Do you see that coming? Because if it's discovering to the level that you've shown us, firmware is really the next piece that we need to get to.
It's the only reason I will like you.
I really like if it's discovering on this level, firmware is the next piece to go to, because I think that sums up where the feeling and sentiment is. Right now, the way that this is working, it's working in a way that is very agnostic to OEMs on the hardware manufacturing side. So Microsoft is kind of coming into an existing ecosystem and doing their best to adapt this feature set to work with things that are already available.
I'll just say one of the name brand like people at Microsoft in a session earlier. This is why it's fun to be at Enterprise Connect this week, because there's been a lot of like hot actual commentary from our friends at Redmond about this stuff. So that was mentioned as a thing that's on the radar. So I can't tell you when or how, but I feel it's more of a. I believe that this is an apple in somebody's eye and not just a hope someday. So I have reason to believe that that's on the list, and I agree with you, Ken. 100% is if the BYOD case is not a solution for firmware updating, it'd be kind of harsh to push a firmware update to any peripheral as a user is trying to get going, but certainly to be able to report on the health of your environment, this does offer that kind of channel for telemetry and things like that again, they mentioned that. So that makes me happy. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken, I saw your question about the difference between the hardware and devices tab. So I just dropped a screenshot in the chat. My hardware tab is totally empty. And that is in a production environment. I will say that in my internal rings, it might look a little different, but if you're testing this BYOD devices feature, the peripherals tab, that's the one that you're going to be inserting devices into. So the rooms, desks, hardware are all being read in different areas, but the peripherals tab is the only place, as far as I have empirically seen.
Yeah, because it was in your spreadsheet, but we didn't see it in the pro portal, so that's why I asked.
Yeah. Okay. And that report that was just kind of the export report has more tabs in it than it had, I think, 6 weeks ago. So I think that's a place where behind the scenes there's work being done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. Thanks, Ken.
Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, I got a session I want to get to in 5 minutes. So not that I'm trying to get out of here, but if there is, let's see what's next on Rob's agenda. The future of meetings and meeting rooms.
Oh, and Holger's in that one. Oh, isn't he?
Yeah, sure.
That's a little self-serving. If you're not at Enterprise Connect, a lot of the sessions you can register online for free and watch. I don't know if that future, actually, I do know because I looked at it because I also wanted to go to that session, and I have only a paltry exhibitor badge. You have a full conference badge. So unfortunately, you want to learn about the future of meetings and meeting rooms. You could just tune into Technically Speaking, where that's what we talk about.
I also have the knife and fork, so they're feeding me.
Wow.
So.
Are there people who are attending but don't have the knife and fork?
Just the exhibitors.
We're irate.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining this Technically Speaking webinar. We really appreciate you, all your questions, all your engagement. Makes it way more fun for us. Otherwise, I just have to listen to Rob for an hour at a time, which I already do enough during the week. So
what a guy. What a friend.
I do what I can. Thanks very much for joining. Tune in next month. I think topic TBD, but it'll be exciting. Keep a lookout, and we'll see you around.
Thanks, everybody.